Now, there are multiple dimensions that we need to look out for tomorrow. One, of course, is the economic dimension. The economy currently is in a COVID-induced coma. How do we bring the economy out of this coma, and what's the ventilator that can revive the economy? The other is the agriculture sector, and how do we ensure that in the harvest season, not just is the crop harvested, but farmers get their money, customers in the end are able to consume the food grains. Joining us on this broadcast, I want to welcome first Pranab Sen, one of India's best-known economists, former chairperson of the National Statistical Commission. With us also at this time is Raghu Raman, well-known corporate hand. He's been CEO of the National Grid of India. Ajay Veer Jhakar is the chairperson of the Bharat Krishak Samaj. He joins us on this broadcast, as well as also Uman Korean. Now, Uman Korean is a public health expert. He's looking at the lockdown, constantly strategizing what would be the best exit strategy. This is what Uman does for a living. So welcome to our guests. But before I start this conversation, I want to take you through the 4 times we've seen the Prime Minister speak about COVID-19 and about lockdowns, and how his message is changing over this period. Remember, the first time he spoke, the focus was Jaan hai to Jahan hai. As time went on, in the last time he spoke, this time to chief ministers, his thrust was Jaan bhi, Jahan bhi. So the life is important, as is the world. So now it's not just lives or livelihoods, it's about lives plus livelihood. Take a look at how the Modi message has changed during this 21-day lockdown.
Since his first address to the nation on 19th March, Prime Minister Modi's messaging on combating coronavirus seems to have been constantly evolving. In his first speech addressing coronavirus, the Prime Minister made an attempt to curb the atmosphere of fear and made a call to action to every citizen of India.
जब प्रथम विश्व युद्ध हुआ था, जब द्वितीय विश्व युद्ध हुआ था, तब भी इतने देश युद्ध से प्रभावित नहीं हुए थे जितने आज कोरोना की इस बीमारी से हैं। पिछले 2 महीने से हम निरंतर दुनिया भर से आ रहे कोरोना वायरस से जुड़ी चिंताजनक खबरें देख रहे हैं, सुन रहे हैं।
It was also when the Prime Minister prepared India for a lockdown by declaring a voluntary Janta curfew.
22 मार्च रविवार को सुबह 7 बजे से रात 9 बजे तक सभी देशवासियों को जनता कर्फ्यू का पालन करना है।
India Today's word cloud analysis of Prime Minister's first speech showed that the focus was on people and the pandemic. The next address was 5 days later on 24th March, where the Prime Minister announced a nationwide 21-day lockdown.
पूरे देश में आज रात 12 बजे से संपूर्ण देश में संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन होने जा रहा है।
This time, the focus was clearly on combating coronavirus. The message was Jaan hai to Jahan hai, or if there's a life, there's a world.
अगर ये 21 दिन नहीं संभले तो देश और आपका परिवार 21 साल पीछे चला जाएगा। आपको याद रखना है, जान है तो जहान है।
9 days after announcing the lockdown, the Prime Minister put out a video message. This time the focus was on boosting the morale of the nation and making the citizens realize their collective strength in these testing times.
चारों तरफ जब हर व्यक्ति एक-एक दिया जलाएगा, तब प्रकाश की उस महाशक्ति का एहसास होगा जिसमें एक ही मकसद से हम सब लड़ रहे हैं, ये उजागर होगा।
The call was to light a candle or a diya at 9 p.m. for 9 minutes. But the message of fighting the coronavirus by following the rules of distancing was re-emphasized.
देशव्यापी लॉकडाउन ने आपके घर के दरवाजे पर एक लक्ष्मण रेखा खींच दी है। आपको ये याद रखना है कि घर से बाहर पड़ने वाला आपका सिर्फ एक कदम कोरोना जैसी गंभीर महामारी को आपके घर में ले आ सकता है।
18 days after imposing the strictest lockdown in the world, the Prime Minister met state chief ministers to discuss the exit plan. While the demand for lockdown extension was unanimous, this time the Prime Minister gave a new mantra. From Jaan hai Jahan hai, it was now Jaan bhi Jahan bhi, implying that the government's strategy would focus on saving lives and livelihoods. All eyes now are on Tuesday, when at 10 a.m. the Prime Minister is expected to lay out the roadmap for Lockdown 2.0. Bureau Report, India Today.
To discuss the four critical dimensions, public health, economic, agriculture and corporate, we're joined by four leading experts cutting across these four fields. Uman Korean is a public health initiative expert at the Observer Research Foundation. Pranab Sen has run India's National Statistical Commission, is a leading economic voice. Raghu Raman set up the NAT Grid, the National Grid of India. Ajay Veer Jakar is one of our best known voices from the agricultural sector. I want to go across to Pranab Sen first. Pranab, what's your sense of what you think the Prime Minister will say tomorrow? We compared his multiple interventions. What do you think he ought to be saying tomorrow? What's the best way of ensuring that the economy can be revived from this coma which has been induced by COVID?
It's difficult to say what the Prime Minister will announce. But I mean, I think let's be very clear. We are starting to run into the limits of the complete shutdown that we have had. So when the Prime Minister said Jaan hai to Jahan hai, he was thinking about a 3-week period. And, we can survive 3 weeks. But the fact of the matter is that unless a certain degree of livelihood generation comes back, the Jaan part of it also comes under threat, not from the disease, but from the non-availability of essentials. So at some point this has to happen. Now we've had the most draconian shutdown in the world. Other countries have kept some production going. And not only have we shut down most production, even those which we had actually allowed to continue, which was essential goods, have run into all kinds of hurdles, both in terms of production. We are seeing what the farmers are talking about. They're not being able to move their goods. They're not being able to harvest because of lack of labor. So even those sectors which are a part of the essentials have been hurt very, very badly. Now, unless we start a phased removal of the lockdown, this can really go out of hand. And what you can see is non-COVID related morbidity going up very sharply. And I think that's what he's concerned about, and hopefully he will have a game plan for.
Okay, so Uman Korean, naturally people like Pranab Sen would be deeply concerned about citizens having enough to eat, the fact that patience is now running out, and yet there is the public health dimension of the crisis that we confront. If you let life get too close to normal, people are then intermingling, moving from one place to another, using public transport, going to factories, and then experts have spoken of the hockey stick-like jump that could be seen in the number of cases. So how do we ensure that we can reasonably contain the virus and yet deal with the livelihood questions that Pranab Sen and others are raising?
Thank you, Rahulji, for having me. It is a very valid concern. The thing that we have to keep in mind is that there is no end game in sight. So we don't know how many weeks or months it will take for us to find a solution. Till we have clear treatment options or vaccines, we have to live with the virus, so to speak. So institutions, individuals and the society as a whole will have to find ways of living with this virus. So the big challenge is to know how we can slowly go back to that new normal. But the problem here is we don't know the gap between the number of recorded cases we have and the actual number of cases. So when it was invoked, the national lockdown was the only policy option we have had. It took courage for us to take it, but we had to. Now the question is, do we know enough? I mean, have we gathered enough intelligence over the last 3
No,
weeks?
so you're asking the questions, Uman Korean. It's my job to ask the questions. It's your job to answer them as best as you can. Please answer all the questions you just raised. Do we have enough data? Was this lockdown successful? From a public health perspective, what's the best thing we should be doing?
The lockdown was successful in the sense that we have delayed the inevitable. We haven't really seen the kind of spikes that we were expecting. We haven't really seen the kind of spread that was expected. We don't have mystery fever patients thronging our hospitals. So in that sense, I would say that it is a limited success, but we don't really know the true extent of the spread unless we get into expanded testing regimes. We have to do pool testing, we have to do aggressive community surveillance, we have to do sample surveys across the country to know the true spread.
So, Raghu Raman, we have a very complicated situation on our hands. On the one side, you've got people who need food, their patients is being tested. On the other side, Uman Korean points out very correctly the lack of adequate information about just how many people are infected at this moment. And yet you've got corporate India that now wants to get some of these factories back on track so that some manufacturing can resume and the economy doesn't get into depression. How do you suggest we deal with all these competing priorities, Raghu?
So there's no doubt that the manufacturing and the industry and the corporates will have to start their engine. These are very, very complicated engines which have parts that are very well integrated with each other. You can't stop one part of the engine and expect the other one to start. So if we keep this industrial engine, manufacturing engine, distribution engine stopped for a longer period of time, then it will crash. For instance, if we don't quickly start servicing the towers of telecoms, we don't start starting the diesel pipelines which are going into the generators, even the communication network will fall. So if the communication network falls, the governance network falls. So I think this is a 6-feet ditch. You can't do it in 2-3 feet leaps. It has to, I mean, this is Hobson's choice that the Prime Minister has got, and it has to be both. This is not between a right and a wrong. This is between one wrong and another wrong.
Laying out the options, there are many options. With all the experience you have of being in government and outside, what do you believe, Raghu Raman, is the best thing for India to do in this situation?
I think we have to restart the engine. There is no alternative, because as the Prime Minister says, and Pranab also said, Jaan hai to jahan hai. Now Jaan can go by the COVID virus also and by hunger also. And once these distribution channels, the migrant workers, they go out, to bring them back is not as easy as it is to send them out. So to restart this engine, if we don't do that, I think we are running out of time anyway. So it will have to be started. There is no choice. We will have to accept.
No, but then you've got the then you're running the risk of the number of infections, which so far are reasonably under control, with India doing much better than most countries. That could possibly change very quickly in a country like India. I spoke to Hemant Soren, the Chief Minister of Jharkhand. He said, you know, forget ventilators. There are parts of the Santhal Pargana areas in the tribal areas of Jharkhand which don't have hospitals.
No, so in any case, I don't think a COVID virus is required to remind us that our medical infrastructure is wholly inadequate in any way. But the point is that you cannot keep a country of our size inside for a period beyond a certain reasonable time. After that, our strategic reserves finish. Our ability to service the basic food, the farmers have to go back. Where will the next month's food come from? Where will the next month's vegetables come from? If truckers are not allowed to bring it to the mandis, how will they be servicing the
Ajay Veer Jakar, you are amongst the best experts I know on the state of the agricultural sector in India. What's your sense of how farmers have been able to cope with what's happened over the past month? What's your sense of what they're expecting should be announced tomorrow? How can we deal with all these competing priorities?
I think in the period of the lockdown, farmers have suffered considerably, and most farmers growing perishable crops like you could say grapes, like mangoes, muskmelon, watermelon, tomatoes, they've not found a market for their produce. So most of the produce is being allowed to rot on the fields itself because of the lockdown. And even farmers who are harvesting mustard or who are harvesting barley and wheat have had problems in selling their produce in Madhya Pradesh and in Rajasthan, and now it's going to be starting in Haryana and all, and Punjab. So I think farmers have been in great distress, and something desperately needs to be done about them. Now, the question is, what has happened is what is the government going to do tomorrow? What is the Prime Minister
What would you like to see the government do? What the government is going to do, we'll find out only 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. What would you like to see the government do?
I think because data is very bad in India, I think what we need to do is we need to give 5 to 10,000 rupees to around 14 to 15 crore farmers that we have. And it's not a huge sum of money. It'll come, if you give 5,000 rupees, it'll come to something like 70,000 crore rupees. If you give 10,000 rupees per farmer family, it'll come to around 1,50,000 crore rupees. It might
Let me put that question to Pranab Sen. Pranab, can we afford this, sir? A lot of people globally have said this is where you must transfer income straight to the hands of those who need it, those who've been dispossessed. India's revenue situation already stretched, GST collections down, government revenue badly off at this moment. Can we resort to the kind of income transfers that we've seen in countries across the world, especially in countries like USA?
Do you have any idea when fiscal balances matter? Fiscal balances are a man-made creation. If the whole issue is Jaan hai, then what Mr. Jakhar is saying is right. But in fact, Mr. Jakhar is not going far enough, in my personal opinion, because he isn't talking about the landless labor and their plight, which is even worse than that of the farmers. So yes, it is entirely doable. Is it affordable? Well, the cost is going to have to be borne by the country for an extended period of time when we unwind the implications of this kind of a government stimulus. But that is not, I think, a choice that we have. We have to do it. Otherwise, the cure may be worse than the disease.
Kind of stimulus you would advocate, and don't just say what you think is the best case scenario, also consider the current state of India's finances.
It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, we have gotten stuck into ways of thinking which came during better times. We have a situation today where the RBI will have to monetize the government's expenditure. There is no choice. Are we worrying about inflation today? No, that worry will come much later. This has to be graded. There is enough economic expertise in the government and the RBI to be able to manage this transition. But to get hung up on numbers like the fiscal deficit is really, it's really almost...
When I was speaking to top voices from corporate India on the broadcast last night, everyone said, this is what my sector needs, my sector needs, and to some extent they're right, sure, because each sector is badly off. But the point is, if each sector starts expecting financial incentives from the government, that stretches government's limited finances even more. How can the government deal with some sectors? Should some sectors be termed priority sectors and bailed out? How do you decide who to help, who not to help? It's a bit like patients in the ICU. Everybody needs that ventilator. Who do you give it to?
So resources will always be on short supply in any kind of a crisis. I think we must understand that money is only a representation of the movement of the economy. Even if you transfer the hands of the farmers, unless they have goods to buy, what is that paper going to do for them? And the goods are not going to come unless the engine is restarted. So obviously there will have to be certain sectors like farming, like transportation, which will have to, like manufacturing, low-end manufacturing, which will have to start so that at least the essential goods start coming back into the circulation. The money is only a representation to buy that. If the goods are not there, what good is the money going to do? So I think the starting of the engine will have to be done with the essential segments, which obviously will be the food and the basic necessities first, and the luxury items and the high-end items, real estate, all of that will have to be, backloaded. That will have to come much, much later.
the immediate sustenance products will have to be the one that will have to be given priority, and that's the way to restart the engine.
Lots of very crucial questions, and there are no easy answers. But what we've had over the past 20 minutes is 4 top experts give their best sense of what the PM should do and what he can afford to do at this moment. Remember, this will be one of the toughest decisions the Prime Minister is going to take in his career. Of that, there can be no doubt, because everyone's looking up to the Prime Minister. Everybody has huge expectations. His hands, in so many ways, are tied. I hope that Pranab Sen, Uman Korean, Raghu Raman and Ajay Veer Jakar, you can join us tomorrow, soon after the Prime Minister has spoken, to tell us what you think he did in comparison with what you were expecting and what you think will happen going into the future. Thank you for joining me on the Newstrack.
Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kamal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.